Hello there, Internet. Demajen here, that guy what makes maps for Metroidvania games. And boy, do I have a map for you today. Ultros. Ultros. What an experience that was. Lots of very interesting ideas, lots of very high concepts, lots of things that you will probably not have seen done in a Metroidvania and potentially video game before. But also some incredibly rough around the edges decisions, which I'm really hoping will get changed and patched. Some of that feedback will be in the YouTube series that I'll be doing, but yeah, I've got some really, really good things to say and some really, really negative things as well. So what is Ultros? It's a psychedelic puzzle game with a Metroidvania shell and some light roguelite elements. And if you're thinking, well, that doesn't seem like my experience at all, and that doesn't sound like the experience of many of the reviewers on the internet, I'm going to hazard a guess that most of the reviews of this game, the 8.5s, the 9s, the 9.5s, were based on getting through to the first ending of the game, which takes you from between 8 to 12 hours, depending on your experience with Metroidvanias, how good at this kind of thing you are. But to get 100% took me 30 hours. I'm not even joking. 30 hours. I finished it maybe 2 hours ago at the time of recording this, and it was not challenging in terms of combat. In fact, the combat in the game is arguably one of the easiest combats that I've had in any Metroidvania. I died maybe 4 times total. But the puzzling, I'll get to the puzzles in a second, because what this game does is very interesting. And in order to show you, I actually need to explain a little bit. So let's use the map. You'll see here that we have loop start. This is where you start the game, and this is where the rogue light elements come in, and they are light. This is a game set on a giant floating space station on the edge of a black hole, and there is a fail-safe device in place to make sure that the Ultros, a dark god style thing, doesn't wake up and just wreck everything. So we start off here. We wake up, we've got no weapon, we've got no nothing. We make our way over here. Chances are you fall down there because you're not going to know it's going to break away. And you go, you get a sword, and you make your way down into the Temple of the Motherhood, where eventually you will pick up the extractor, which is the device that helps you do things. Double jump to start off with, but it's got a return program, or we'll have a return program once we get up to here. So we'll grab the extractor, we'll make our way up, we'll kill the first boss, the enraged moth beast. There's not much else that you can do there. You'll make your way up through here, you'll make your way up to this kind of shamacell thing. You'll smack it in a bit because you've got no other option. You'll grab the returner modification, and you'll make your way through here, because that's all you can do, to the Ultros chamber, where the extractor will go blah, 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 blah. It'll get sucked into the machinery. You will also get sucked into the machinery, and you will wake up back here without the extractor, without the sword. And this will happen 2 or 3 times with you going to various zones in the game. From there, you'll be able to make your way up into the garden, but you won't be able to do much there because you can't get down here. You'll make your way back here, but because you haven't killed one of the Shamacell, you can actually walk through the Ultros chamber, and you can head into whichever of these zones you want. You can go down and explore the Rotten Orchard. You can go into Vaza's Legacy for a little bit if you want as well. There's a little bit of kind of non-linearity. But you'll do this several times until you make your way back through one of the areas. I think it was this one, the garden. And you get sidetracked. You get locked in by an enemy and you have to start running this way all the way through left because you just can't get past it. You get knocked down into Infinity Lake, which I've just noticed I haven't actually put the name for on the map. I'll get that sorted. You make your way into Infinity Lake and you don't have your double jump. You can only get to here. You can't get up there because it's too high and this stuff is filled with fluid. So you have to go along here, activate this ball spawner, kick the ball or flip the ball all the way over there and down here, and then you can make your way through all the way through here, all the way down here, no double jump or anything, to this. And this is where the game really begins. Probably 4 to 5 hours in. Up until that point, it's been a metroidvania with some very light roguelite elements. And this is where it becomes a puzzle game. There's a little kind of colony of wisps down here called the Living Network. And as you can see, there's a line that is drawn all over the map. And you might have noticed that already. That is there for a reason. This is the Living Network. And it doesn't start off like that. It doesn't start off like that at all. But you'll have noticed that these symbols correspond to statues. And you'll have been seeing them all around the map up until this point. And you probably haven't, well, you won't have known what to do with them. If you interact with them, it just says awaiting connection. And this is interesting. It's not only interesting in terms of how it's dynamically generated on the map, how many different ways there are of doing it, but also interesting in terms of just how long it takes. So what you have to do is you have to take this tethered line, it gets tethered to you and it can only go a certain distance, and you have to daisy chain it around the entire map. And this is not a small map. But you'll notice if I zoom out, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 of those sarcophagi that you broke. And if you can get this Living Network line back to those sarcophagi, you can connect them up and change the ending. So if you break all 7 of them and head back to the Ultros chamber, you'll have a final boss fight. You'll get the True Returner upgrade, which will allow you to reset your loop whenever you want. And you will want to in some cases, because it means that a lot more plants grow, compost grows back, enemies respawn, bosses respawn as well. And the one thing that really bugs me, in fact, arguably the biggest map-related thing and traversal-related thing that happens because of the loop, is that all of these breakable shortcut barriers also respawn. And not only do they respawn, but they get removed from the map. So the gaps that you've created, they get removed from the map. So it makes getting around a little bit finicky and annoying in many ways. So you can get ending 1 just by killing Qualia, breaking down all of the kind of sarcophagi, shaman coffins or whatever they are. But if you connect them all up to the Living Network, which takes hours, and I'm not even joking with hours, it is very much a kind of puzzle. Oh, well, what seeds do I need to put where? What plants do I need to put where? Do I need to compost it? Do I not need to compost it? There's one section up here. This room here took me literally 45 minutes to an hour and a half, I think, actually, in the end, to figure out just how to get up to here, to get over to here, to get in here, to fly over here, all just to get a mycelium upgrade, which I didn't actually need at that point because I'd already unlocked everything. So that felt a little bit unsatisfying, and that is my biggest critique of the game. Some of the things that you really have to work at to get to. Like, for example, this door up here, it took me ages. In fact, this entire zone took me ages to figure out how to get the network up there. And you can see how I did this room on the map just because of how much of a pain in the ass it was. But this looks a right mess. I don't know whether this was bugged or what, but that's how mine ended up looking because of how certain plants grew in a slightly weird way. I'm going to go back through my footage and see if I can get a kind of a version of this where the line isn't so wibbly and messed up, just so I can kind of stick it in there and say, well, this is how I did it. The payoff for things like this, it's like, oh yay, it's another mycelium, but you have to do this if you want to get the 100% of the map. Not necessarily 100% of the things on the map, but to get the achievement for unlocking the entire map, you need to do this because you need to get in there. And likewise, you need to do this because otherwise this section of the map over here doesn't unlock. It doesn't, unfortunately, feel quite rewarding enough for the time it takes you to do certain things. The second ending that you have to do all this work for, it's a good ending. I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it was worth an extra 15 to 20 hours of this puzzle. If you were expecting a Metroidvania and instead you got 15 to 20 hours of essentially a puzzle game with some Metroidvania elements, then this is, I have the game for you. This will be just what you are after. It's probably the only game that will fit just what you are after. But if you wanted a kind of psychedelic Metroidvania romp with tight controls and good combat, that's not what Ultros is. Ultros is a growing and gardening game with a lot of Metroidvania elements. The combat is pretty darn easy. There are a couple of upgrade abilities that you can get which trivialize basically everything. There were only maybe 2 or 3 times in the last 20 hours of game that I died. Just wasn't very challenging at all. The roguelite abilities have a second facet to them. When you wake up here for the very first time, you have no abilities, no nothing. And whilst, yes, the extractor gives you the ability to double jump, and you can find certain Metroidvania style abilities like digging tools and splicing tools and thruster tool, which I'll talk about in a second, to get around the map. And every time you pick up the extractor, whether you get it from there the first time or whether you get it from here when you return to the Ultros chamber from loop 2 onwards, or whether you get it from Gardener up here in a much later loop, like loop 4 or 5 or something, you get the Metroidvania abilities back, but you've also got a kind of skill tree, and that you get from eating food. You raise your 4 nutrition levels, and then you spend that nutrition on unlocking abilities. And those abilities can be locked into place eventually when you find these little kind of brain things. And again, that's a good system. It's a very similar kind of system to a lot of roguelites where you gain the ability to lock in permanent upgrades. That's great, but it feels a little bit faffy when it comes to getting into to start off with. There are, however, more of these brain locks, these whatever they were called, myceliums. There are more of them than you need, by 5 or 6, I think. So by the end of the game, but by probably halfway to 2/3 of the way through the full game, you'll have unlocked all of those. Anyway. And a couple of them, there's one that makes your health regenerate based on one of the 4 kind of nutrition level stats. That basically makes you invincible most of the time if you keep that bar up. There's one that does that allows you to wall jump, the controls for which are not great, if I'm honest. There's 2 attack upgrades which are fairly easy to get, and you're going to want to lock in straight away because, again, that trivializes the game pretty easily. There's one that lowers the aggro radius for enemies, and you'll need that down in certain parts of Infinity Lake. But the biggest issue that I have gameplay-wise, not the puzzle game, not the kind of overarching what you have to do, but the moment-to-moment gameplay, the biggest issue is the thruster. The thruster is an upgrade that you get, and it allows you to essentially fly for short periods of time. You get it down here, so you get it fairly early on, and it means that you can fly with R2 after gathering some kind of energy in these gold mushrooms or any of the kind of various fluidy, liquidy pools that you can find in the game. And to start off with, it's really cool until you get to try and navigate your way around the Gigamojo refinery, where you will realize that the thruster controls like absolute dog shit. And I do not use that phrase lightly. It is awful. It is some of the worst handling controls I have ever experienced for an ability in any game in my 30 plus years of gaming. I absolutely loathed it, and unfortunately it is absolutely essential to 100%ing this game. You just can't get to some areas without it. That getting around the refinery, especially when you get the upgrade to the thruster, which allows you to kind of swim against the currents, it was just a nightmare, and I hated it. I really, really hated it. And if there is one piece of feedback, if there's one thing only that I would really, really like the devs to change, it is the handling of the thruster, because it feels awful. And so much of the issues that I have with the game, the negativity that I have with the game, is to do with its controls. The wall jump feels like ass. The thruster feels as bad as any ability that you could imagine in any video game ever. It is so bad. But it could, of course, be fixed. It could be fixed, and it could make getting around so much easier and so much more fun, because what they have got going here is really, really interesting. Really interesting. You know, connecting up that living network, figuring out how to get it to various places. And as I said, the route that I've got on here, not the only route. Not the only route in the slightest. There are only certain ways that you can go. I mean, from here, you can go down to there, and that's fine, and that's kind of on its own, but you can't get backups. But you can't get back up into the Temple of Motherhood that way. You can go through down into the Rotten Orchard. You might be able to get it up into Vass's Legacy from there, but I don't think it's really necessary. But if you want to get it back to the start of the game, you have to go up through the living quarters and through the Pantheon of the Stars and down into the garden to get you back to the kind of main hub-ish area. That was the only way that I could find to do it. I tried for ages to figure out a way to get from here through to there. I tried for ages to figure out a way to get from there into the garden, and I just couldn't find anything that would stretch far enough. I discovered later, because I had to, that the brambles will just keep on growing, and maybe I could have stretched that through there, and I could probably stretch it for the rest of the game if I wanted to, but it wasn't worth it. I 100%ed the map. Everything that you want is on here. All the bosses, all the trophies that aren't obvious, and some that are, all of the compost locations, all of the kind of living network connectors, including some that actually aren't on the in-game map for some reason. This one here doesn't get marked on the in-game map. I don't know why. I'm assuming that is a bug. I think, but I'm not 100% certain, but I think all of these little green sprout icons are somewhere where you can plant something. Yes, I mapped every single one of the damn things out. Apart from the ones along the ceiling in the Infinity Lake area here, because I don't think there's any way that you can actually get up to them properly. And yeah, there's no real need for that. All of the seeds that you can collect that are just kind of lying around, I've also marked all of those on. And you'll want to know where they are, because once your loop resets, your inventory is empty. So you're going to want to know, well, where do I find the particular seeds and stuff that I need? Where can I go to get the compost? Because compost refreshes as well. Final points. There are 3 essentially types of barrier in the game, and I've marked them all on. These skull barriers are in the game, they're black kind of wispy smoke thing. You can only get through those in 2 ways. If you have got a Shamacell destroyed, so you collect its essence, you can then get through those barriers as long as you've got that, but that disappears as soon as you return to the Ultros chamber and it gets absorbed and you start a new loop. However, if you have a living network tether attached to you, you can bust through these barriers as well. These doors, the ones marked with a lock, in the game they are big black doors with red symbols on. They either need a key in the case of these 3 specific doors, but otherwise they usually only open from one side. In most places I have put a note that you need the connection, and again, that one here actually needs that note as well. I always find stuff that I've missed when I'm doing these videos, so that is something to look out for as well. If you see a network connection point like that, and that symbol changes in game as well, by the way, but I can't change the symbols on the map. The other type of barrier are, as I said, are these kind of breakable blocks. They're black blocks with kind of colours in them. It's pretty obvious in game which side you have to hit them from. Most of these are 100% accurate. There's probably some cases where actually if you tried really hard you could get to it from the other side, but they are what they are. Some of them require charged attacks to break, others don't. I don't see any rhyme or reason for why that is, but 'tis what it is. So, Ultros. I recommend it for ending 1. It's a decent and entertaining Metroidvania with some light roguelike elements. For ending 1. The Path of Violence. You're going to have a really specific mindset to 100% this otherwise, and I was very close to giving up on it multiple times because I just felt that it wasn't respecting my time very well. With a guide, you're probably not going to have that issue. But of course, there weren't any guides, and I don't think anybody else is likely to really make a guide for this game. It's only somebody with a very specific mindset like me, I think, that will put out something like this, because this was, it was in some ways very tedious, very thematic, you know, the idea of growth and gardening and patience and new life. It's very thematic, but if you go in expecting that fast-paced Metroidvania action, it's only there for the first 10 hours, and then after that it is this big, organic, interesting, high-concept puzzle that you need to try and figure out how to do. I can't say I recommend 100%ing this. Unless you play it over multiple weeks, or you really in the kind of growth mindset. It's a game that very much has a story to tell. How can you get your hands on the map? This one is shop only. I had such a hard time putting this together for multiple reasons. I had such a hard time putting this together that if there ever is a free version of this, it won't be for several months. And again, I know that that's going to irritate some people. Deal with it. Honestly. If you are struggling with connecting things up in this game, you will know that it is probably worth buying a copy of this map. Because, I had some very choice words. The air in my studio was blue a lot of the time throughout this 100% section of the game. Not because necessarily it was bad, although the thruster controls were very responsible for that, but just, I can't get this to effing work how I want it. Why is this not doing this? What is the rule for that? The game is obtuse in many ways. It requires patience and trial and error. And if you know you don't have those things, get the first ending, put it down. Because unless you like Souls-like style levels of frustration and painware, the second half of Ultros is probably going to cause you to quit anyway. So yes, that's why it's a shop-only map. Link to that down in the description below. It's at coffee.com/Demajen, as all of my maps are. As are all of the kind of updates to this and other maps that I have produced. Thank you very much for listening to me talk and rant and try and explain a game that makes it very difficult to explain it. Ultros. A very interesting experience. Thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let me know down below your thoughts on Ultros. If you have listened to this entire video and you've played the game for yourself, what was your experience? Because I very strongly suspect that everybody that tries to 100% this is going to have a very different set of experiences. Stay safe. Have a great day. Thank you for the support. Cheerio. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not click the like button and consider subscribing. Remember, you can ring the bell notification icon to get notified when new videos go live. And until next time, cheerio.